Welcome to Math 31, Section 4.3, and we're going to learn how to multiply and divide fractions. It's actually pretty easy to do this. When we learn how to add and subtract, it's a little bit harder. Okay, so we'll start with multiplication. And the most basic way to get a multiplication problem done is just to multiply straight across the top. So here you get negative 20, and straight across the bottom, 35. And then you might have to simplify on the other end, so what we've got here is divide by 5 and divide by 5. So negative 4/7 is the correct answer. Now I'm going to redo this problem using a technique that will make it a lot easier. When you have a multiplication problem, and I want to emphasize that, only do this when there's a multiplication, you can cross cancel. So for instance here we can divide this by 5 and divide this by 5. And what that does is make your answer pop out a lot sooner. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, and 1 times 7 across the bottom is just 7. Okay, so we're going to take advantage of cross-canceling as much as possible. So if you go in the downhill direction here, you get negative 2 and 3. That's dividing by 2. You can also divide by 2 in the other direction, 5 and negative 1. And when you multiply negative 2 times negative 1 across the top, you get 2. And across the bottom, you get 15. Okay, so that cross-canceling really makes things easier, but I'm going to emphasize once more that you can't do it with anything except multiplication. All right, so if you don't have a denominator, then you have to supply one. And the one you supply is actually 1. You put it over 1. Now, in this case, I think we can do some cross-canceling. Divide by 2 and divide this by 2. So you end up with, let's see here, negative 100n squared over 3 times 1 would be 3. Okay, on the next problem, we can cancel the number r out of the problem. And let's see what else I can cross-cancel here. I can actually cancel within the fraction. That's called simplifying. But I'm going to choose instead to divide these corners by 3. And then I'll just multiply across the top and across the bottom. So you get 6p over 55. Okay, this is probably a good place to make a comment. If you're not careful, you can lose details when you do this cross-canceling. So for instance, this might have been left off the answer. Okay, we have a problem that requires us to know the order of operations. The exponent should be done before the multiplying. So we'll multiply all this out. Negative 3/4 times itself 3 times in a row. And then we'll multiply it by negative 1/6. So now that we have it all written out and it's multiplication all the way down, we can cross cancel. I'm going to cancel this one and this one by dividing by 3. And the top numbers, if you multiply them all out, give 9. And across the bottom, you get 128. So 9 over 128. Okay, first time we've had it in this little video, we're going to be dividing. And dividing gets traded for a multiplication. You change the dividing to a multiplication. So you can see that division sign is no longer part of the problem. And you'd have to divide by the reciprocal of the second fraction. And now that we have a problem that is a multiplication problem, we can cross cancel. 1 and 4, that would be dividing by 5. And if you divide these by 6, you get 1 and 3. So multiplying the remaining numbers across the top gives 3, and across the bottom 4. So your answer is 3/4. Okay, once again, you're given a number without a denominator. If it doesn't have one, then you can put it over 1. 14 divided by 1 is actually just 14. And we're going to make the change here. We'll exchange the division for multiplication, and that second fraction gets turned upside down. Okay, now we're back on familiar territory. We can cross cancel. Divide by 2. In this case, you get -2 there and 7 there. And that gives us -2 across the top and 49 across the bottom. Maybe it's a good time to discuss this. The negative sign can go up top or out front. And even though it's rare, it could even go on the bottom. Don't put it in both places if you mean to have only one. Okay, example H. We're going to go ahead and make the familiar switch here. Change the division to multiplying by the reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, let's see what we can cross cancel now that we've got a multiplication going on. This is y times y, and one of those two y's will cancel with along the bottom and leave you with an extra one up top. 18 and 21 both divide by 3. And 15 and -6 both divide by 3. Now, very carefully reconstruct all the numbers across the top. There's a 5, a y, and a 7. Multiplying those gives 35y. And across the bottom, 6 times -2. Okay, example I. We're supposed to find xy. And we're also supposed to find x plus y for the values that are given. So the first part is xy. We're going to multiply these together, 5/9 times 2/3. And that would be implied here. When you put an x and a y next to each other, it means you're supposed to multiply them. So I don't see anything at all that cross cancels in this one. So we just multiply across the top and across the bottom. Okay, x plus y. You know what? I'm going to erase that one because I haven't taught you how to add yet. I'm not sure why I put that one in there. Oh, I know what it's supposed to be. Hang on. Let me make a brief change here. It's supposed to be x divided by y. That's what it's supposed to be. So now that we got that fixed, x divided by y would be 5/9 divided by 2/3, which we immediately change into a multiplication problem. Notice that the 2/3 is going to be turned upside down. And now we can cross cancel, dividing by 3 in this case. We end up with 5/6. Okay, example J. We're supposed to decide whether 3/4 is a solution to the equation. So we're going to be plugging it in place of that x. And it will look like this. 1/12 times 3/4. Does that equal 1/16? If it really does, then we'll say, yes, this is a solution. So on the left-hand side over here, we're going to divide this by 3 and the 12 by 3. You get 1/4. And multiplying the top gives 1, the bottom gives 16, and sure enough, 1/16 equals 1/16. Since this is true, then you would say, yes, 3/4 is a solution. I'll abbreviate solution with an apostrophe. Okay, last example here, example K. They want to know what 2/3 of 48 is. Well, the word of in this context, in the context of a fraction, means times. So we're just multiplying 2/3 times 48. You have to supply a denominator. And this one also cross cancels, divide by 3 and divide by 3. And you end up with 32 over 1 times 1, which is just 1, and we're going to leave the denominator off since it's just a 1. That gives 32. Okay, so that does it for the 4.3 section of the book, and you'll find that these parallel pretty closely to the homework that you're assigned out of the book.